Hey everyone, I'm Tina with Nurse Leadership Solutions, and this is
Joy within the journey.
Joy Within the Journey. Whitney and I have Sheila with us. She has been a remarkable nurse in senior care, and we wanted to hear a little bit from her today so she can share her joy and, maybe some laughter and some not so joyful moments, but overall, the joy within the journey of senior care. So, Sheila, first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have been a nurse since 2012. Got started a little late in life. I actually went to nursing school right out of high school, and my mom and dad kept my son at home in St. James. I went to Barnes School of Nursing in St. Louis. I would come home just about every weekend.
Wow, that's about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I had a friend who was going to the pharmacology school up there, and I would ride home with her, and then I'd get back to school and I'd cry till about Wednesday, and then able to focus on my studies, and all of a sudden it was the weekend. I'd go home, spend time with my son, and anyway, I ended up just dropping out after a couple of months. It was just too hard to leave him. He was very young at the time as well, so I ended up.
How old was he?
He was almost a year old.
Almost a year old. Yeah.
Yeah.
In
young.
our first podcast, we talk about my daughter was 3 when I was in nursing school, and that was very challenging. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It was. No. And then I got married and had a couple more children, raised my family. And I had always told myself that when my youngest was old enough to kind of drive around and a little more self-sufficient, that I would, in fact, go back to nursing school. So I did in 2011 and entered nursing school for the second time at the age of 41.
Wow.
So I kind of got a later start in life, but it had always been in the back of my mind, and I knew that someday I would make it happen.
That's
Hey,
awesome.
now that I'm well over 41, that's still very young.
I get called kid a lot still, so I'll take it as still being young as
That's
well.
the benefit of senior care. That's the joy, is that you're always young and everyone around you.
You're always a kid.
Yep. I love it.
So,
all right.
So did you get to stay home with your babies during that time?
I did not.
No.
I worked as a certified pharmacy technician for about 12 years and decided that I would stay home with my daughter when she was young to babysit. And that just wasn't for me.
Mhm.
It wasn't for me. I love children, but staying at home was a challenge. Taking care of other people's children just wasn't what I was meant to do, I guess, at the time.
Yeah.
So
it's hard.
I could never be a stay-at-home mom. Just never was in the cards and was not something that entertained me.
When my babies were babies, I didn't even, it wasn't even an option for me. I had to work. But now that my babies are older and I don't work as much as I did back then, I do regret not being able to stay home and spend that time with them when they were little.
Right.
Well, I'm pretty sure you just took them to work with you sometimes.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. We can't get away with that these days, but that was fun back then.
Yeah.
There's pictures of me holding Callie.
In my office.
In your office.
Yep.
While you were doing payroll or something.
Yeah. Nice perk.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're able to do it, make it happen.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
My kids grew up in the building that I worked in, basically. Yeah.
I never had the ability to bring my kids to work with me, but
yeah,
made it work out. So I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, as far as, how I got started into nursing and what essentially led me to where I'm at now.
How many grandbabies do you have? Because I know they're your pride and joy.
They are. I have 5.
Yeah.
4 boys and one little princess. I shouldn't say little. She's actually the oldest, but
yeah,
4 boys and a girl. And they are. I have a daughter and 2 sons and 5 grandbabies.
Wow. And, I know you spend a lot of time with them. And I get that because I worked and I thought the same thing, like, oh, I'm going to have more time to myself. But now I want to spend every waking moment as a grandma or nana. I'm a nana.
And I don't want to rush my time away, but I cannot wait to have grandbabies because I want to be the grandma that can stay home with my grandbabies. I don't want my kids to have to worry about daycare and who's going to watch them this week and that week. And I hope I get to keep all my grandbabies.
Mm-hmm.
It is the number one joy of my life is my grandbabies and becoming, I'm actually a mama. So becoming a mama was the greatest feeling ever. And I know that you can relate to that, Tina. It's something that you don't fully understand it until you experience it. I mean, people can tell you it's the greatest feeling in the world or it's, the best thing, but until you experience it, you realize it's a feeling like no other.
Yeah. I totally agree. I adore that little girl with all my heart. And she was actually here this morning, and I hate to see her leave when she goes, but
does she leave screaming and crying?
Sometimes she does. She loves her Nana. So you're in senior care. Have you been a nurse anywhere else besides senior care?
Only one other job as a nurse has been outside of senior care, and it was actually the exact opposite. I worked for a company in troubled youth. So I went from actually started in senior care, long-term care, did that for about 2 years and actually took on a second job with the troubled youth, with the company that I worked with, and was doing both jobs at one time. Fresh out of nursing school, I was so excited to be a nurse. I didn't have young children at home, so I had the time that I could devote and actually worked 2 jobs. Loved them both equally, but ultimately my passion has just been in long-term care.
Why do you suppose that is?
Honestly, I don't know. I went into nursing school petrified of the clinical rotation for long-term care and did not want anything to do with long-term care. Like I dreaded it and ended up doing my rotation in a skilled nursing facility that actually had a rehab side. And that's where I spent all of my time. And I was like, okay, this isn't so bad. These people are just here for rehab. It's, didn't seem at the time to me to be the same thing as being in a skilled nursing facility full time. And there was a lady there that was legally blind and had Alzheimer's. Her call light would go off nonstop, and the nurses and the full-time staff that worked there would just almost cringe every time her light would go off.
Oh, not this one again.
I know. There was always, and as nursing students, you're always like, oh, I'll get that call light. Like I was just so excited to be a nurse and everything that it entailed. So I was like, okay, I'll deal with that. I'll handle this. I'll answer that call light. We'll go take care of the lady that has C. diff, because we were like, oh, that's so exciting to get to, experience the clinical side of actual nursing.
Aren't we weird? I mean, who's excited about going to take care of C. diff?
Who is, or the wound vax, or the, all the things that, we were getting to experience in nursing school. But this lady just grabbed a hold of my heartstrings, and I kind of took her under my wing, and I would sit and visit with her, and she totally changed my thought process on long-term care. And from that point on, I looked forward to it. I chose my 6-week leadership and management rotation at the Veterans Home in St. James on the Alzheimer's and dementia core there, that they call them cores, not wings, and enjoyed every bit of it. The rest is history, I guess.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that story.
Yeah, she got to me, and I can't even say that it was one. I think I felt so bad for her being legally blind in a room where she wasn't familiar with things. So I think everything just made her a little nervous, a little uneasy. So she was constantly on her call light and just more so wanting the attention, I think, than anything. And
I mean, that would be terrifying.
I think she was, and that's kind of what got to my heart. And so Alzheimer's and dementia have a special place in my heart. It's my true passion, and I attribute all of that to that one lady.
Well, as you know, that is where my heart is. It's in memory care. It's because of my grandmother. So, which, we have her sitting right here with us, Martha. So, but that is definitely where mine is.
So how do you stay motivated in long-term care? What keeps you going in long-term care?
The residents, first and foremost, obviously they're, our number one priority. You build such relationships with them. I mean, I feel like I spend an equal amount of time with my residents as I do my own family, and sometimes even more.
Mm-hmm.
So they are my motivation, but also my staff. I like to feel that I'm a mentor to them. I try to teach them as much as I can, try to, um, give them all the guidance that they can to become better caregivers. And I still have CNAs that I used to work for probably 10, 12 years ago that will reach out to me for references, letters of recommendation, or they'll post things on social media saying that, they are the caregiver that they are because of, the things that I taught them, the things that they witnessed me doing. And it means a lot to me to have staff members look up to you like that. And for me to see that this many years later, they're still working in long-term care. They're working with, our seniors. And I truly feel like they're still giving them the best care that those people deserve.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. That's a great feeling.
It is a great feeling. So retention and orientation and mentorship is something that we're going to be really passionate about and working towards. So tell me, what are some of the things that you did? Because I know you have a wonderful team now.
Thank you.
And you have some from the past in previous places, as you just mentioned. So tell me, what are some of the things that you feel that you do in order to mentor them?
Well, right now, I actually have two different communities that I work in, and they are very different from each other. One is a memory care community, the other is strictly assisted living, and they're very different from each other. The staff in memory care have to have the truest type of passion for that type of work.
Agree.
I feel like everybody has to have a passion in healthcare to be a good, caregiver. However, memory care, it's a total different type of passion that you have to have. So we look at who we feel would just be a good fit within the team. Also taking into consideration, have they ever worked with seniors? Have they ever worked with anyone with Alzheimer's or dementia? But also just finding out enough in their interview that we can kind of determine which building they would be a better fit in. And sometimes that has led us to, moving staff to the opposite building just to be a better fit within the staff, because it's the teamwork that you need. It has to be a collaborative effort. And if they don't work well together, it's just not going to happen. It just causes too much drama. And so we're very selective on who we hire, even in, the toughest times when you're having a huge staffing crisis. We really try to handpick who we think would be the best fit in our building. And then, of course, we like to make sure that they feel appreciated, that they know that, that they've done a good job, that we appreciate all of their efforts. Just try to, reward them, even if it's just making sure that you say thank you, if it's writing them a little note, if it's, buying them their favorite drink or bringing in a lottery ticket with a note that says, we're lucky to have you or something like that. But we really try to make them feel appreciated.
For as long as I've known you, you have always been fantastic at appreciation gifts. You put your heart into what you make for your team. It's always personalized. With your cricket, you always cricket something up for them.
Try to.
But your gifts are always over the top and fantastic. So I can't imagine your team doesn't feel appreciated, because you do a good job doing that.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's important. People have different ways that, they feel appreciated, and you just have to figure out what each person responds to the most, whether it's words of affirmation, if it's gifts, if it's, I'd give them all a huge raise if I had the power to do that, because I think they're all worthy of more than what they make for what they do. But
I would agree. But, the examples that you just gave were perfect examples where it didn't cost much to be personalized and appreciated. And because a lot of times we don't have the power to do that. But if we do,
right,
we would love to. We
sure,
we do agree. It's nurses and teachers and those industries that are taking care of people. We all know are a little on the low end.
I've even sent a note to someone's spouse who's been putting in a lot of extra hours, just thanking them for allowing them to be away from the home and the family and kind of picking up the slack when they're helping us out. And
Yeah, that's
that goes a
incredible.
long way as well when you,
Because if they don't have the support at home, it's hard for them to have that dedication at work,
especially if they have families. And
right. I had a supervisor that did that, and I still have those cards where she sent them to my kids and thanked them for sharing me.
right. That's
awesome.
what you're doing. Yep.
That's very meaningful. So tell us about a time that still comes to memory for you of a laughter, a funny time that you cherish with a resident or family member that you've had.
Gosh, there's so many, but I can tell you that working in memory care, you have the funniest moments. You have the funniest conversations, and let's face it, laughter's the best medicine. But
yes, agree.
I did have a resident one time that asked me if I was the slut that stole her man.
Oh, wait a minute. I got a button for that. My apologies. Go ahead. Tell us all about it.
And I just looked at her and said, no, that must be someone else. I have my own man. And she was so serious. And she said, well, you look just like her. And then, of course, I just came back with something like, oh, people tell me all the time that I remind them of someone. And then she had the most intense look on her face and said, you're so stupid. And all you can do is laugh. I mean, you just laugh. But I have a resident right now, and we haven't figured it out. I clearly must remind her of someone. But every time I walk into that building, she hollers. She's, oh, where have you been? I've missed you. She tells me that she loves me. She blows me kisses. And the other staff are like, we don't get it. Like, we blow her kisses all the time, and she just looks at us. You walk in the door and she's openly blowing you kisses. And I just, maybe I remind her of someone.
Yeah.
Not really sure, but it certainly makes my day when I walk in. And
what a good feeling.
She's full of laughter, and she can be tearful. And the minute I walk in, she just perks up, and she'll either laugh or give me a big hug, and it's wonderful.
That's awesome.
And that's how you keep going.
Absolutely.
And
those moments.
In a very challenging world, that's how you keep going, those moments of joy there.
Yep.
So tell us, if you were talking to a new nurse, what would you tell them about senior care?
Tell them about senior care. I would tell them to give it a try. You may surprise yourself. I certainly did. Like I said before, going into nursing school, I did not want anything to do with senior care. It scared me. And it has been the greatest joy that I face in any job that I've ever had, has been working with seniors because of the difference that you can make in someone's life.
I described it the other day. We learned what holistic nursing was in nursing school, all three of us. And, you heard about it. You think you're giving it everywhere if you're going to be a nurse. But to me, senior care is 100% holistic nursing. You're caring for the whole person, the whole body, the whole family, the team that's taking care of them. You're caring for everything. And the more you know about that person, the more engaged you are with that person, the more that you can care for them properly. My dad has been struggling with his health the last year, and it's been very challenging for us. And as you know, I am a nurse, and I can be kind of sassy.
No, not you.
Yeah, maybe a little sassy, a little
I'm shocked.
a little opinionated. And I try my best to keep my mouth shut when it comes to, I don't even tell him I'm a nurse. I'm just sitting back there quietly when he's at the doctor, at the hospital, or rehab or wherever he's at. I'm just sitting back as quiet as I could be. But I'm just like, gosh, I mean, every time they do one little thing, they don't realize how it affects the whole rest of his life. Whereas when we're caring for them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we see that. We see exactly what it does when you increase your Lasix a little bit. It affects this, or when you decrease this antipsychotic medication or antidepressant because it's at day 60, and you're supposed to do a dose reduction. It is the truest form of holistic nursing that there ever was. And we shared before on a previous episode about how, as an RN, they'd always say, why do you work in senior care? You could have more clinical skills elsewhere. You could, there's all these other things that you're not doing as a nurse in senior care. And it just blows me away that people have that opinion, because I'm thinking, okay, so I'm not, doing NG tubes and doing everything else, which, now there's whole teams that do all those individual things if you're in a more clinical setting or acute setting. But to me, like, the basics of nursing school that I went to is, first you start with fundamentals, which is caring for the whole person. That's doing their ADLs. That's learning to assess them. That's learning to take care of their whole body. And, then you get into nutrition, and then you get into, the basic things that they need. And then you get into care planning. And that's what I was getting at. We talked about care planning. We care plan the whole person. We don't care plan just a diagnosis. We care plan the whole person, and also how we're going to interact with their family and how everything. To me, that is the most truest form of what I learned in nursing school that you could give me an example for. So, I just think it is something that new nurses maybe don't think about as much as, everybody's eager to start an IV in nursing school. And we joke around this because you would not want me to start an IV for you, but I could care for you very, very well. Right. But you wouldn't call me in to do the IV. So
it's funny that you mentioned that, because my first experience in nursing, like I said, right out of nursing school, I went into a skilled nursing facility, and that's where I worked for probably 6 years before I came to the place that I'm working now. And it was totally different for me. And at first, I really missed utilizing my clinical nursing skills. I mean, I'd only been a nurse for 5 or 6 years, and I was really enjoying, that side of things. And I very quickly learned that it is the holistic approach to caring for that person.
Heart goes into doing long-term care for sure.
Yeah, it was different in the sense that, you're not utilizing those clinical nursing skills, but you're caring for them in sometimes much more meaningful ways, in ways that they need it more so than the clinical things that they need. And that includes families.
Yeah. Well, it includes their doctors, their therapists, that, whether depending on the setting that they're in, but their doctors, their therapists, their families, their diets, a dietitian, everything and anything. We joke about what aging does to our bodies, which is not pretty. We talked about that. And a lot of that isn't a medical diagnosis. That's just, we're getting old. Yeah. And this is what it's done, and this is how we're going to have to deal with it.
There's not a pill for that.
There's not a pill for everything. Sometimes you just can't fix it. Yeah. So, all right, let's see.
So can you share a example or a story of a time that you made a significant impact on a resident or family?
Well, I would like to think that I make a huge impact on all of them every day. Yeah. But yes, some more so than others. I had a resident that came to the assisted living community that I was working at from a skilled nursing facility. She had gone in because she was reclined back in her recliner and got her arm stuck in the recliner, was home by herself, was living by herself. So she was stuck. And so essentially she just had to rip her arm out.
Oh my gosh.
Also was on a blood thinner at the time. So that's what led her to going into a skilled nursing facility. She actually went there for rehab. She had a horrible tunneling wound in her arm. She'd been at the skilled facility for probably 6 to 8 weeks before she came to our assisted living. And that wound had to be packed the dressing had to be changed 7 days a week. And it was pretty intense when she came to us. I committed to packing this wound and changing this dressing 7 days a week. I came in on the weekends, made sure that I was there 7 days a week. And then I went to her appointment at the wound clinic about 10 or 12 days after she admitted to our community. And they were so impressed with how much the wound had healed in those little shy of 2 weeks compared to the 6 or 8 weeks that when she had first gotten it.
Right.
And discharged her from the wound care clinic's care at that time. So I was pretty proud of the fact that, we got her healed up in less than 2 weeks after she came there. And she actually lived with us for about 7 years before she ended up passing away. But the family was very appreciative of, how quickly we got that taken care of. And I think it's because, I made sure that I was there 7 days a week. I made sure that everything was done exactly as it was ordered to be done. And
yeah, that's incredible.
So, yeah.
That just goes to show what a fantastic nurse you are.
Yes, very much so.
Do you ever miss bedside? In the position you're in now, it's administration. Do you ever miss like the more clinical bedside aspect of it?
Sometimes. I mean, I still am involved in the nursing role where I'm at now. But as far as like the actual clinical side of the IVs and the trachs and the NG tubes, yes, I do kind of miss that. I think because I didn't do it for very long before I came into the setting that I'm in now. But I still enjoy what I'm doing now very much.
That's awesome. My story was very similar to that. After I went to nursing school right out of high school and did charge nurse for maybe 6 months before I went into a staff development role. So kind of got away from the bedside full time. And then from there on out was in leadership roles and never really got the clinical aspect of things. And then a couple of years ago, I started at the hospital and I have absolutely loved being on the clinical side of things. I feel like I'm a nurse all over again, like a brand new nurse all over again, because there was so much I didn't know. But I can start that IV for you. And I can put that NG tube down and not make it come out of your eyeball. But I did miss that. And I feel like right now I'm thriving at the bedside, like the clinical aspect of it.
I mean, most people know going into nursing that one of the great things about it is there's just so many different things that you can do in nursing. I mean, so many different types of nurses that you can be, but there are also many different roles that you can play in senior care as far as nursing goes as well.
Absolutely.
And, myself now an administrator and, but you can go into, all different aspects of long-term care. There's, MDS coordinator, staff development, like you said, HR, there's just a lot of different roles that you can play as a nurse. And that background that you have as a nurse is beneficial in all of those positions.
I agree. My roots will for sure always be long-term care, and I'm just naturally drawn to the seniors, the elderly, and even at the hospital now, my peers will get an admission and it'll be an elderly person and they'll say, "Oh, Whitney wants that one," or one will wheel by and I'll say like, "Oh my God, they're so adorable," and they're like, "Oh, Whitney wants that one." So they tend to give me all the elderly admissions because they know I just love them.
You truly find your passion in nursing, that's for sure.
So I know previous to this role, you were a director of nursing.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that we really want to focus on because the directors of nursing is the hardest position in senior care. And when I think I told it on an earlier episode I said, when I become administrator and I said that, the administrators are like, "What? How dare you say such a thing?" But to me, it is the hardest role. Now, maybe there's a comparison when you are a nurse and the administrator, like we are. But in the same instance, the director of nursing role is, to me, the hardest. What advice do you have for other directors of nursing? Run!
I would love to say always try to find that work-life balance. I do know that sometimes that can be very difficult if you have staffing challenges or things like that.
That is so hard to have work-life balance as a director of nursing, even as an administrator, because I mean, that buck kind of stops with you. And if you don't have anybody, you are that person. You're the cook. If you don't have a cook, you're the CMA. If you don't have a CMA, you're the maintenance man. If a toilet overflows in the middle of the night and you don't have a maintenance man,
and sometimes I would find that balance by, working a couple night shifts throughout the week, or, staying late in the evening, coming in later in the morning, staying late in the evening. Just ways that I could rearrange my schedule a little bit. So if your job allows for that, I would say rearrange your schedule in a way that you can find some sort of work-life balance so you don't get burnout.
Yeah.
Right.
It is great to have that flexibility.
It is.
Yeah.
I would agree.
The hospital that I work in now, we have all the nursing students. We have the RN students, we have LPN students, and they don't speak very highly of long-term care. And I don't know if it's just the buildings that they're doing their clinicals in, like they're just turned off by long-term care. But I wish anytime they talk to me about it, of course, I have a lot of things to say because I have a lot of experience there. But I wish we could find, like you said, the work-life balance going into long-term care, and for new nurses to just give it a chance. And you either have the passion for it or you don't, but at least give it a chance to find out if that is your passion.
Right. And if it's not, there are plenty other areas of nursing that you can explore.
Right.
But I think if it's not, it also gives them a really good core to be a good bedside nurse, no matter where they're at, because you're really having to do a lot of that bedside versus running in the room and running out of the room and, different things. You really have to have that personal care background, as an RN, and I'm probably piss off all the RNs right now, but, as an RN, and a lot of times they're like, oh, the RN won't go do personal care. And I'm like, again, back to what's the first thing you learned in nursing school, which is fundamentals of nursing. So,
and even being in skilled, like you can tell in the hospital who has worked in long-term care and who hasn't. And you do have those nurses that will call for a tech to empty a catheter or to get a set of vitals. And I'm like, you can do that yourself. They're busy. Don't bother them to do those things. Yeah. That gives you the extra opportunity to go in and visit your patient and check on them and visit with the family members, answer any questions that they have. But working in long-term care gives you that respect and the knocking before you enter and asking, is there anything else I can get you before I leave? And like that holistic approach.
Right. And all those things are important. Like I constantly tell my staff, when they're complaining about, well, someone was pulling their call light, 5 times last night. And as soon as I would walk out, they would pull their call light again. And it's like, okay, but are you doing the basics of just asking them while you're in there, is there anything else I can get for you before I go?
Right.
Like, so you have to always have all of those basic fundamentals in the back of your mind, because sometimes it's those little things that will make the biggest difference. And also those little things that will make your life a lot easier as a nurse if you just take the time to do it. Like you said, getting your own set of vitals, emptying your own catheter bag while your CMAs or CNAs or aides, whatever they're referred to in your setting, are probably doing something a little bit more important and something that would take a lot less time if you would just do something while you're in the room with them. So
just knock it all out while you're in there.
Get it all done. Yeah. Get it all done and saves everybody time.
Yeah.
Running back and forth.
Well, that goes back into another basic of prevention of, having to go back in later, and prevention of having to, ask for it and everything else. So again, all right. Well, that's our time today. And I want to thank you, Sheila, for joining the Joy Within the Journey.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Whitney, for also being here.
Love it.
And have a good day, everyone.
Bye.